In this video, we're going to be talking about how to produce output to the console in Java. There's essentially three ways that you can produce console. You can use system.out.print. You can use .println, which will produce a new line character. You can use .format or its equivalent printf. So print will simply print a string to the screen but not produce a new line character. So for example, here we could say system.out.print hello world, and down here we can compile that. Whoops. Down here we can compile that. And when we run it, you see that it produces hello world but no new line character. So we could fix that by going back here and adding ln. And now when we compile and when we run it, we get a new line character. So print and print line should be used when you just want to produce some quick output, typically when you're debugging. Also, you can print variables. So let's say I had age equals 40, and I could say something like age equals, and then notice the plus sign. That allows me to do string concatenation. And when I say Java C, and I produce the output, I get age equals 40. Now typically, if I'm trying to produce a report or something more sophisticated, then I'm going to want to use either the format or printf. And again, they do the identical thing. And as an example, they both use C's formatting style strings. So down here, or up here, let's just do a rather simple one. System.out. We'll do printf, age equals %d, and I'll explain why I'm using %n in a moment, age. And we can compile that, run it, and you see it produces age equals 40. Now if you need a quick brush up on what options are provided, we'll go through them now. Basically, a format specifier can consist of a number of fields. So we'll draw it out here. We'll draw an example, %, say one string, plus 0, 20.10, and F. And we'll say what all of these mean. So the % is just the beginning of the format specifier. The $1 indicates the argument index. Now, if you're just using typical C formatting specifications, you can omit this because it will just print out the variables in the order that they appear in this format specifier. But this allows you to reuse something. So for example, this will say use the first argument in the variable list. Next, we have our flags, and the plus sign here is saying please put a plus sign in front of the output, or a minus if it's negative, and use 0 for padding. There's a few other flags. Minus means left justification, in which case you have to use a field specifier or a width specifier to specify the width, and you can use minus, you can use a comma to indicate a thousand separator, and it will choose the appropriate thousand separator depending on the locale. So you don't have to say dot if you're in Europe. It'll automatically select dot rather than a comma. The 20 is the width specifier. It's how big the field should be. If the value is not big enough, then there will be padding. This is the precision, tells how many decimal places after the decimal point, and finally your conversion operator. And there's a few additions to Java that are not provided in C. The big ones are %b, which will print out true false for a Boolean, %n, which outputs the appropriate new line character on whichever platform you're running on. You should use %n rather than \n. However, this does not apply to other escape sequences. So for example, do not use %t for tab. That will cause an error. Instead, you still want to use \t. So %n only for the new line character. And there's other conversions that work that, for example, %s is something you could also use with an enumerated type to get it to print out as a string. There's converters for date objects, which you can check on later. There are also formatting classes for internationalization when you want more sophisticated conversions. So for example, there's a decimal format class, but we're not going to worry about that in this course. The thousands separator is one thing that you might use commonly, and that automatically creates the right thousands separator. So let's just go through now a few examples. And I've already set up one here. So we are printing out math.pi. And you can see that we have first printing it out as a normal floating point number, and then we have a much longer specification here. So the 1 is saying print out math.pi again because it's the first variable in our argument list. Then the plus says put a plus sign before it. The 0 says pad out any blank spaces with zeros. 20 says it should be 20 characters wide. And then 10 characters after the decimal point is a floating point number. So let's give that a try. And you can see that it produces the plus sign 10 digits after it. And just to show you an example with bool, we'll produce a Boolean. We'll say system.out.printf this time. Notice before I use format. And we'll just do 10 less than 20, which we all know is true. And you can see that true gets produced as the result. This is it for output to the console. There is a separate video with file I/O that shows you how to write formatted output to files.